I'm not really a big fan of Spider-Man anymore. I used to read some of the comics, but then I realized that they were predictable and cheesy, so I stopped. I think the first two movies were disappointing, and the third one was worse than Biodome and Batman Forever combined. However, when I played Spider-Man 2, I fell in love with the game. The swinging was the best part, as you actually had to have something nearby for the web to attach to. A huge step from the previous games, where you swung from satellites and clouds. When Spider-Man 3 came out, I ignored all the bad reviews it was getting and bought it anyway because of the new black suit. But I soon learned that to use the black suit, I had to reload the entire game, which kind of ruined the hype for me. The swinging was still fun, but it didn't really get better from the last game. In fact, it felt slower and more floaty. I've skipped some of the Spider-Man games, like Ultimate Spider-Man and Friend or Foe, mostly because I was too afraid that they would be more like Spider-Man 3 and less like Spider-Man 2. But the latest entry, Spider-Man Web of Shadows, showed some promise, so I decided to suck it up and try it out. The result? A resounding meh. The first 15 minutes of playing consists of a tutorial, but the next 15 minutes generates such a buzz that you think the entire game would be this awesome. The best new addition is the ability to switch between red and black suit on the fly, and even in the middle of combo. However, after about 15 minutes of playing, you are taught a move that is so easy, so ridiculously cheap, that you'll never need to use another move again, making the game an extremely repetitive romp through mediocrity. But we'll get to that later. First, let's talk about the graphics. The first thing you notice about the game is the graphics. I'm playing the PS3 version, so maybe it is better on the 360, but the first time I saw the explosions, the textures, and the models, I had to check the box again to make sure it wasn't a PS2 game. The switch between red and black suit is probably the only thing in this game that looks anywhere near nice. The action animation includes one of my pet peeves in gaming and movies, and that's the irresponsible use of slow motion. Instead of slowing down to show us the actual move, it slows down for the animation before the move. Of course, it doesn't actually slow down, or accelerate either. It just jumps from normal speed to slow speed back to normal again, all the transitions being very sudden. The sound is as bad as video game sound gets. The explosions sound like someone popping a paper bag, and the web sounds sound like someone spitting into a microphone. The voice acting starts out funny, then you realize it's not supposed to be funny, and it becomes annoying. The voice actor for Spider-Man is probably the worst actor I have ever heard, with a voice that sounds like he missed puberty and writing that sounds like it's out of the latest Star Wars film.
Now that's just mean.
It just makes you want to skip all the cutscenes, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, seeing as how there are so many Marvel characters stuffed into 8 hours that it becomes too convoluted for its own good. But let's skip to the thing that made Spider-Man 2 great, the web swinging. The coolest thing about the original mechanic is the relative realism of it. You had to have a building to swing on. Unfortunately, that has been removed again. Sure, you can only swing when there are buildings around, except for the final fight, but most of the time, if you move the camera to look up the web, you'll see that the line is not actually hanging on to the building, and you're not swinging according to the building either. This takes away most of the immersion of the old mechanic. Luckily, the swinging animations are the best the series has seen so far, and although the immersion is lessened, it is still fun swinging around the huge city. The fun just won't last as long as it did in previous games. Unfortunately, the worst part about Web of Shadows is supposed to be the meat of the game, the combat. Most of it is just random button mashing, and that would have been fine since you can mix it up for yourself by chaining together black and red moves in one combo. However, about 15 minutes into the game, you're taught a move that lets you kick an enemy, fire a web at him, then zoom in for another attack. This move can be chained together infinitely and takes away almost all the challenge of the game. I don't think I died a single time on either of my two playthroughs. The next big problem with the game is that through the first half of the game, the city is fine, with cars, pedestrians, and different types of criminals to beat up at every turn. But get about 4 hours in, and the city changes. The symbiotes start to take over the city, all the cars and people disappear, and the only enemy type left is the symbiotes. This continues for the rest of the game, and it never returns to the living form of New York. Treyarch has never been one of my favorite developers. Spider-Man 2 was excellent, but they have destroyed the series since then. Spider-Man 3 made the wall crawler games hit rock bottom. Web of Shadows isn't quite up to the Spider-Man 2 standard just yet, but I am happy to report that despite its many flaws, Spider-Man Web of Shadows is swinging in the right direction, and it gets an average C. If you're a Spidey fan, you owe it to yourself to check it out, but rent it before you buy. Next week on The Perspective, a PC gaming special. First, I take a look into the world of PC gaming and all the different communities there. Then I review the PC version of Left 4 Dead. Does this zombie killer live up to the hype, or is it missing some brains? Find out in 7 days on the Sharp and Pointy Perspective.